Today, we're talking about common relationship myths and misconceptions. There are a lot of these misconceptions floating around in our daily conversations. Little phrases, little sayings like conflict is bad, healthy couples don't argue, opposites attract, love is enough in a relationship for it to work. All these things that we've heard a million times. But the danger, I think, with these, generalized pieces of relationship advice, all these kind of relationship rules, is I think they create like silly expectations, right? That we can end up carrying around with us unconsciously, making us feel like we need to adhere to these rules or like our relationship needs to follow in this way. Otherwise, we're doing something wrong or there's something wrong with our relationship, and I think the issue there is a relationship then being kind of controlled a little bit by how you think it should look or what you think should be important in your relationship and what it should look like and how the dynamic should work. Once that kind of starts controlling it to any degree, I feel like it's then no longer a relationship that's based in reality. I think being attuned to the actual individual relationship that you're in and what works in that dynamic is kind of the only way to actually have a relationship, in my opinion, that's based in reality. And also, like, matters of the heart are too nuanced and too situational, really, to be tied up into like a neat little bow in a very black and white, one size fits all kind of phrase. I don't think it works when it comes to love and relationships. It's just too nuanced. I also think the sweetness of relationships often is sometimes, why or how a relationship works between two people is kind of unexplainable. The fact that there are no rules and that two people kind of create their own little bubble with their own, boundaries and things that they find important and their own dynamic and little things that work for them, with their own little quirks and preferences. And everyone is so different. And I think the fact that two people kind of somehow create a dynamic between them in some unexplainable way that makes them both happier and more fulfilled. And, I think that's the sweetness of relationships, is that like you can often get the most unlikely pair of people that you would think that would never work. I can't see how that would work. And people make it work. And it's something you can explain. There aren't rules to it. Do you know what I mean? That's kind of why love is what it is. Often couples go completely against the norms and kind of create their own way to govern their relationship. People have separate bedrooms, separate apartments. They don't live together. They're long distance. They're in open relationships. There's like kind of there's no wrong way to do it. Whatever works for the dynamic you're in, if it works, it works, and you don't really need, you can't explain that. It just either works or it doesn't. And I think relationships are kind of one of the only things in life that work that way, that it's so different and so situational. There's couples that spend every waking hour together and they love it and they wouldn't change it and it's healthy and they're happy and whatever. Fine, might not be your cup of tea, but you don't have to do that. You can do whatever the fuck you want. You could see your partner once every 3 weeks, and if that makes you both happy, then who cares? Do you know what I mean? And I think that's why, in my opinion, a lot of these kind of myths and sayings that go around, they can feel kind of narrow-minded and a little bit judgmental when if there's a loving dynamic that works and it doesn't fit that, who gives a fuck? It doesn't need to be understood by anyone else. Do you know what I mean? It just doesn't. It's not something that anyone else needs to get. Unless you're in it, it's not your business. However, when phrases and myths and sayings have been around for a very long time, phrases like opposites attract have stood the test of time. People have been saying this forever. It does make me think there may be some validity behind them. Otherwise, I think they would have faded out. We wouldn't maybe be hearing them so often still in 2024. So on that note, what I wanted to do today is go through a few of these relationship myths and misconceptions that I've picked out that I find interesting and kind of pull them apart a little bit and debate whether they've stood the test of time for a reason or if there may be something we don't need to take so seriously and maybe we could let go of. And I would like to preface this by saying I am 22. I do not have years of wisdom behind me of relationships and marriage and all sorts of things. I'm just kind of saying my thoughts so far, speaking from my experience. Currently, that's all we can ever do. Maybe I'll revisit this if I'm still doing this podcast in like 20 years, and maybe my opinion will have changed. But currently, these are my thoughts. Okay, so the first one is opposites attract. This is a common relationship kind of formula that we hear all the time, that contrasting your partner in terms of personality, temperament, interests, is a good thing. That you'll kind of create this sort of yin yang situation between you and create, one neutral middle ground between the two opposites, If you merged the two people together, they would create this kind of like perfect in the middle person, like this harmony would just happen, right? So, personally, in my opinion, I think this rarely works. I think for some people it can work. Of course, like I said at the start, you can find the most unlikely couple ever, and they can live a very happy life together. This is all possible. However, I think it rarely works. I think more often than not, I would say it creates a compatibility issue. When it comes to things like if one of you loves driving, you love to drive the car, and one of you hates it, perfect. Opposites did attract in that way. When it's like superficial shit like that, do you know what I mean? Sure, it can work. One of you loves cooking and one of you hates cooking but loves washing up. Amazing. Perfect. Do you know what I mean? Stuff like that, sure, that's great. But I think when it comes to things that actually matter, for example, your work ethic, your curiosity about life, your outlook on things, things like that can actually, if you ended up having children and things, do you know what I mean? Like, you kind of need to be somewhat on the same page with what's important to you and how you kind of view the world. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think a lot of the time when we're talking about opposites attract, we're kind of thinking about the superficial stuff, like your hobbies, or if you're an early bird or you're not, even that can create a fucking issue. I think if one person wakes up really early and one person lays in all the time, I think that can even cause issues. Because that comes down to your lifestyle, and your values. This is the thing, like, a lot of the time, things aren't as small as they seem. Like, for example, like I just said, if one of you likes to get up early and, like, take the day by a storm, and one of you likes to stay up late and kind of wake up late, there's not, like, do what you want. However, there's kind of a value clash there, isn't there? Your time and how you like to spend it. And I don't know, I think I could imagine you driving each other mad. And again, I'm not saying that this couldn't work for a couple. Sure, like, people are so fucking different with what they care about. And if those two people don't give a shit about that, then that's fine, that works. However, like I was saying, like hobbies and stuff, it so depends how much deeper the thing goes, right? So if you're talking about hobbies and, one of you loves sport, one of you's really into football and fitness or whatever, and one of you isn't, that in some situations wouldn't matter because someone would be like, I'm happy to go play my football, you're happy to do something else, amazing. But sometimes, we're not that simple. People are very multi-layered. And a lot of the time, for example, if someone's really sporty and they love football, maybe fitness is a big value to them. Maybe looking after your body and having hobbies and getting out and socializing is actually a value to them. It's not just about, oh, I love football. It's like if it runs deeper, and it can go into someone's values and what they actually give a shit about in their life. They might really care about, like I said, being fit and moving your body and staying, healthy. And if someone else doesn't do that, it may on the surface just look like, I love sport and she doesn't, or he doesn't, whatever. But I don't think things are generally that simple. I think generally the things that we do and the things we care about and what we spend our time doing, they say a lot about what we care about. Therefore, a lot of the time, the opposites, they can cause a lot of issues, in my opinion. And I think this opinion has changed. Like, I think I used to have the opinion that you don't need to align on everything and that, you can kind of balance each other out in a nice way. And in a lot of ways, you definitely can balance your partner out. You don't need to be like clones of each other, having differences. I think it's also good. It just, like I said, in my opinion, it depends how deep that thing runs. Is it just something that you like and it's kind of on the surface and that's cool and it kind of gives you these different interests and that's great? Or does it like run down into a value? Because then that's where issues come up. Do you know what I mean? But like I said, an opinion I used to have is I think you don't need to align on stuff like that. Like, if you're different in a ton of ways, you'll just balance each other out. That's amazing. I think over the last year or so, that opinion has changed. And I think things are a lot more seamless in a relationship when you're kind of similar people. You don't have to be clones of each other. That probably would cause its own issues. You definitely want some differences. But I don't know, I think I've kind of experienced both ends of the spectrum in my life, being in relationships where I'm with someone that's really not like me, and then being in a relationship where someone is really like me. And I think from my experience and, people around me as well that, have talked to me about their relationships too, I think it makes your life a lot easier when you're quite similar to your partner, And I was doing research. There's a lot of studies that show we do tend to be drawn to people that are similar to us. And I think, again, like I was saying about it depends how deep the thing runs. I think sometimes it can cause you to, like, not really respect your partner. It so depends what it is. But I think there is a big thing of, like, if you and your partner, like I said, you view things very differently, or you value your time very differently, or maybe you value family differently, maybe you love family and your partner doesn't, or like I said, you get up really early and you really care about your time and making the most of your day, your partner doesn't. That could seem irrelevant, but it could also make you start to kind of lose respect. For example, you're someone who really takes care of your body, and you love to get up and you love to go out and you go to the gym, and you're dating someone who, they might not be a shitty person, they might be a great person, but they don't care about that at all, and they would rather wake up at midday. You might not respect that person's kind of view on shit. It might make you lose that kind of, like, respect. You do have to respect your partner, kind of like the way that they live. It doesn't have to be the same way as you, but you have to like your partner's lifestyle, I think. I don't know. Again, I'm fucking 22, but from my experience, it's a lot easier when you're with someone who lives their life and spends their time and all of these things in a way that you respect and you like, because at the end of the day, you're picking, like, obviously, most of the time, you're picking one person to be with. Like, there's enough people out there we clash with or find annoying or whatever. Like, don't pick a partner that fucking annoys you all the time. And of course your partner's going to annoy you, whatever. But I think doing your best to pick someone that you actually are kind of on the same page with is just going to make your life a lot easier than waking up and being like, ugh, them again. Do you know what I mean? I don't know. I think that, again, I'm just talking from my experience, that can happen when you're too opposite. You can end up just, like, being annoyed by them, basically. Call it what you want, but it can end up just annoying you because you're not in the same place, you're not in the same mindset, you don't see shit the same. It's just annoying sometimes, I don't know. Let me know your thoughts on all of this. This is why I wanted to talk about this, because I find it so interesting, and everyone kind of sees it all differently. Everyone's opinions are a little bit different. So do let me know what you think. Okay, so the next kind of saying that we've all heard that I wanted to talk about is that you should never go to bed angry. Right, this one I picked because I find it particularly interesting, because obviously I do think it's massively preferable if you can resolve something before going to sleep. That is so preferable, because there is nothing worse than waking up, and slowly realizing that you're in the middle of an argument. Do you know what I mean? You wake up and you're, like, still half asleep, and then your brain starts waking up and thinking, what do we have to do today? What's going on? And you realize, oh shit, I'm still in an argument. Your day starts on such a bad foot, do you know what I mean? Because being in, like, a bad place with your partner is very unsettling to your day. It just does make us feel like shit, like nothing else does, So I do think if you can resolve something, it's so much nicer too. I completely agree. I think it's obviously massively preferable. However, I think the phrase "you should never go to bed angry," a lot of the time, sleeping on something, it can be the best thing to do, because if you're quite worked up, especially before you're going to bed, because then you're also tired and exhausted and probably have stuff to do in the morning, and it's the last, like, time to get into something. But if you're emotionally, like, charged up and you're feeling quite worked up and, like, emotionally hijacked, you're just not really yourself, I think sometimes the best thing, again, that I can only speak about myself, but for myself, I think sometimes the best thing I can do is go to sleep, because I almost always wake up with a better perspective. Almost always. It will make me, a lot of the time, see something more clearly, gain a healthier perspective, not feel so annoyed. I'm more calm and rested, and things will go better if you try and talk to me in the morning a lot of the time. And I think a lot of people are like that, because a little break to mull things over, to process things, to unwind a little bit, that benefits most people. And I also am a big believer in, if you're trying to have a big conversation or some sort of argument or disagreement or whatever, I think timing is huge. I think making sure you're talking about it at a time where you're both available and in a good place to talk about it is huge. And obviously that's not going to happen all the time. Like, sometimes you just argue at the worst time ever. But, like, I think if you can agree to talk about something in the morning, you know? As much as it's annoying that it's like spilled over into another day, especially when a lot of us have to then just wake up and go to work, and then, you don't want to think about it all day at work either. Like I said, it's preferable to not let it spill over into another day. However, it's just unrealistic to never do that. And I think sometimes it's not an unhealthy thing to do to sleep on it and to go to bed and agree that you're going to deal with it at a better time. Do you know what I mean? And of course, it depends on what the thing is, if it can wait or not. I just think staying up really late, trying to solve an issue at like 1 a.m. because you don't want to go to sleep angry, is just stupid, because you could go to sleep, wake up, and feel like 10 times better anyway. My mum always told me when I was younger, everything feels worse at night. Everything is worse at night. Go to sleep. And the amount of things, especially as like I'm quite an anxious person, and my mind will wander, and at night comes up with the craziest shit that you would never do in the day. So half the time I just think going to sleep, you're actually doing each other a favor half the time. I just don't necessarily agree with the phrase that you should never go to bed angry, because it's a blanket term for like, actually I think a lot of the time it's best to just go to bed. I don't know. For me personally, going to sleep and waking up and having a coffee, talk to me then and you're going to get a lot further. Do you know what I mean? Okay, so the next one that I want us to talk about is that love is enough. Love is enough to hold a relationship together. Love conquers all. If you love them, you can make it work. All you need is love. I don't know what the phrase is. There's like 700 phrases meaning the same thing with this one, but you know what I mean. I think that loving someone is not enough. I think it needs to be matched with respect, with trust, with actions, with effort. There's a lot more in a relationship than just loving someone. And I think, saying, but I love them is such a common justification to stay in something that you're not happy in. You hear that all the time, but why are you with them? To someone that's like clearly not happy. Because I love him or something. I'm like, right, but that doesn't mean you should stay in it necessarily. I get that it like is massively painful to leave someone if you love them. However, I just think evidence has shown that loving someone is not enough to make a relationship happy and long lasting. It's a key ingredient for sure, but a relationship is not a one ingredient situation. There's a lot of things that need to kind of work. Do you know what I mean? And again, I think it comes back to, for me as well, you might love them, but do you like them? I just think there's a difference between, you could love someone, right? But do you really like them as a person? Take out, do you want to marry them? Do you want to be in a relationship with them? Do you respect this person as an individual? Do you like how they spend their time? Do you think they're a good person objectively? Do you know what I mean? I think there is a difference, because you can be in a relationship with someone and have all these feelings, but if you zoom out a bit, you might not even really like a lot of big things about them. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of like, having that friendship. People say, you want to be dating your best friend, it's good to be friends first. All of these, there's so many fucking phrases, right? But I think something that's good about that is you're warming up to, you're liking this person as they are, taking out all of what you want from them, what you want in the relationship, your expectations and potential and all of these things. It's like, do you just really like them? Do you want to be friends with them? Do you like spending time with them? And I think that is quite a different question to, do you love them? I don't know. Do you know what I mean? Let me know. Because I've definitely been in relationships where I would say I love this person, but if I really think about it, do I really like them? Do you know what I mean? Like, do I like and respect and think that they're a good person and that they're sweet, and I like how they spend their time, I like how they treat people, I like how they treat me, all of these things, There's so much more to a relationship than just loving them. And also, like I said, there's trust is huge, respect is huge, because you could love someone, if you don't trust them, that relationship's probably going downhill. You could love them and not be very committed to the relationship, and that could fuck with it. Do you know, there's so many things that you also have to feel and do. And I think just loving someone is great, but it's not enough to give the relationship longevity, because again, 22, I don't know, but I imagine in a really long-term relationship, there can be long phases of months or even years where things are not going well, things are not going your way, you're going through a lot of stress. You could, financial stress, family stress, children stress, I guess they're family too, but you know what I mean, that you have to have a lot more holding the relationship together than just that you love them, because there will probably be times where that might be questioned. Do you know what I mean? Where you might be like, what am I doing? I don't know. And you have to have more than just, but do I still love him or not? And then you can just walk out. Do you know what I mean? I think it depends what you want, but I think in a super long-term relationship, just loving them is probably not strong enough of a glue to hold that together, you know? Okay, so the next one, happy couples don't fight, or the healthy couples don't fight. Conflict is bad, always. This, I disagree with. I think everyone fights. I think everyone argues. I think you could be with the most compatible person for you on earth, and you're gonna fall out, you're gonna disagree. You're not gonna see things eye to eye, even if you're generally really similar and compatible. Like I was saying, you're not gonna see everything the same. You're gonna annoy each other. They are going to wind you up. Do you know what I mean? No one will wind you up quite like your partner. Do you know what I mean? Whoever they are, however much you love them, however healthy and great the relationship is, they can piss you off, you know? You're not gonna never argue with them. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I don't think arguing is necessarily unhealthy. It can be, of course, but it's not always an unhealthy thing, in my opinion. I also think when couples never argue, that can also kind of be a little signal that maybe something's wrong, that maybe people are biting their tongue, maybe people aren't saying what they think enough, maybe people are conscious of the other person's response or reaction. You know, maybe they don't feel comfortable to say what they need and say what they want and say what they think, or maybe they don't bother. Maybe they're lazy, they don't say what they need, and that's going to create issues too. Do you know what I mean? I think it's better to be telling each other things that maybe are going to cause arguments sometimes or cause issues or annoy each other, and be transparent with each other a lot of the time, you know? It's not good to be in a relationship where you're biting your tongue, because you're not going to get what you want. You're not going to be happy, and neither are they, because you're not even saying it. You know, not that I think you should spend your whole relationship telling each other what, you know, I want this, I need this, blah, blah, blah. You're going to drive each other mad. That's not going to work. You know, choose what's worth saying. However, I just don't think it's true that happy couples don't fight. I don't think that's true. I think fighting is a part of being in any sort of relationship. You know, you're going to fall out with your friends, you're going to fall out with your boyfriend, you're going to fall out with your family, because these are people in your life that you're spending time with and that you care about and that there's emotions in it, and you're not going to see eye to eye on stuff. So therefore, arguments will happen with anyone that you give a shit about. Do you know what I mean? I do think potentially what you're arguing about makes a difference, you know, and how often you argue. I don't know. I think you could argue really frequently and it not necessarily even be a bad thing if you're even in the slowest fucking pace ever, moving in some sort of direction, positive direction, not a bad direction, then I think, all right, it's serving a purpose, it's doing something, it's creating some sort of movement. You know, relationships are difficult, people are very different. The longer that you're with someone, the more that you find out how complicated everyone is, how flawed everyone is. That I think if you fall out and you disagree and it's going in, even like I said, a really slow pace of a positive direction, or helping some areas, and you can see some sort of change at some point in whatever this argument is about, then I think sometimes it's a way of figuring out the other person and figuring out each other's boundaries and what you feel and each other's perspectives. You know, obviously there's a line where it can be disrespectful and you can argue in a way that's like unhealthy if you're being horrible to each other and saying shit that you can't take back. You know, there is definitely arguing that's not good. However, disagreeing, not seeing eye to eye, having different perspectives and getting wound up by each other is just going to happen. And I think sometimes it just shows you a new perspective. You know, we're all quite stuck in our ways in a lot of ways. We see things how we see them, and sometimes having someone else clash with you and be like, no, I see this differently, or I think differently about this, can kind of make you realize that there isn't necessarily a right or wrong in anything. Your way isn't necessarily always the right way. Their way isn't always the right way. Like, everyone is just different and wired differently and sees things differently, and that's just, you're gonna clash at times. I don't know. I don't think arguments are inherently negative. You know, I think they're not fun, and they're stressful, and they're draining, and they're annoying, and no one wants to have an argument with their partner. However, we're people and we're all very confusing, and we're not robots, and we're going to have feelings and emotions, and we're going to say stuff and blurt stuff out and annoy each other. And I think it's just a part of being a human being. I just see it as completely neutral. I don't see it as a really great thing or a really bad thing. I think it can be either of those things. But if you're just arguing and you're still creating and both working on having a good relationship and you're trying and stuff, like, it doesn't necessarily mean it's like a red flag if you're arguing. I don't know. Okay, I'm gonna do one more. I could do these for so long, it's so interesting. Maybe I'll do a part 2 of this, because there's many more relationship myths and misconceptions. Again, share your thoughts because everyone has different opinions on these things. Again, there's no right or wrong, like I've been saying. And this is just kind of what I currently think about them. But my last one is that it will feel easy when you're with the right person. No, you'll know you're with the right person because it will feel easy. I think this is bullshit. I think, like I said, the more you know someone, the more time you spend with someone, the more you realize we're all fucking weird, we're all complicated, we're all a bit messed up by things, we're all a product of what's happened to us. We all carry around weird things in our brain from other people or our family or exes or whatever. No one is straightforward, therefore no relationship is going to be easy. You know, you could be a really great person and you're not going to be an easy partner to have. No one's an easy partner to have. However, I think being with the right person, again, that's another like that myth. Is there a right person? Who fucking knows? But being with a person that's good for you, right? You are more inclined and more willing to work on stuff because the relationship means more to you and you're more invested and you care more and you feel more certain that this is a relationship that's worth it and that you want to be in. Therefore, you're more inclined to work on shit. If you're with someone that doesn't really feel like a good match to you, it will feel harder because there's more resistance because it might not be so worth it. It might not be so obvious that you want to be in it. You know, if you're with someone that drives you mad and you're questioning whether you want to be with them frequently and stuff, and then an issue pops up, you might be like, for fuck's sake. Whereas if it's like a relationship with someone that you really love and that makes you really happy and you have a really nice time together, you'd be like, let's, you know, resolve this because this relationship means a lot to me and I really want to be in it. You know, so I do think there's more of a willingness and an inclination from both ends if you're with the right person to work on stuff. Therefore, I suppose it would feel easier than if you both had a lot of resistance to it. But I don't think there is such a thing as like an easy relationship. I think relationships are hard and I think that they are difficult, and a lot of it I think is adjusting to someone else's ways. You know, this person, even if you're really compatible and quite similar people, we're all quite different. You know, we've grown up differently, we see things a bit differently, our like little habits and quirks and stuff that we don't even know we do, we have a lot of them. We're all a bit weird, like I was saying. And I think a lot of being in a relationship is accepting that this person is different and they do things differently and that they're not wrong, you're not right, you know. And I think that's something that whoever you're with, you kind of have to adapt to a brand new person and a brand new system of shit that they do. Everyone's just weird. And like that, the aim is not to change them and make them more like you know, make them more what you want. The aim is to work more towards, you know, accepting who they are. In my opinion, I think accepting who you're with for who they are. Obviously, if there's like deal breakers in there, that's different. But accepting who they are, not trying to make them more like you. We all have a tendency to think that the way that we do things and see things and want to handle things is the best, healthiest, amazing, most incredible way. And they should do what we do because it's great. It's like everyone thinks how they do things is the way to do things. But we're all a little bit mental, so we need to remember that. There is no such thing, it's all subjective. Like I said, we've all grown up in different places, and I think for that reason, no relationship's going to be easy. There's a lot of adapting and accepting and adjusting to another person. You know, your partner you spend a lot of time with, and I think the more you know them, the more you have to adjust because there's different phases, you know. You know them more and more. For example, you're dating and then you've got the relationship stage and then maybe you move in together and you see a whole new fucking side of things that you didn't know they did stuff like that. You didn't know that, you know, maybe they're really messy or they are really tidy or they're like have really bad taste in furniture or they're really particular about their bedding or something. You just find out more stuff where you're like, oh my god, I'm with a freak. Do you know what I mean? Everyone is just strange. And I think this is what I mean, again, back to the first point, being quite similar people is just gonna be, you're swimming not upstream, downstream. You're going in the correct, you're not going against the fucking current. Do you know what I mean? You're giving yourself a lot harder time trying to date someone that you clash with all the time. Finding someone that you're quite similar to is gonna help, in my opinion, because you're already probably gonna have to adjust to a lot of stuff. It's already not gonna be easy. Help yourself out and pick someone that you like and that you're kind of similar to, at least. Do you know what I mean? And that's why it's important to be with someone that you really want to be with. Do you know what I mean? But I think that's a lesson that I've learned too from my experience in relationships is if you know why you're with someone, you know you want to be with them, it feels completely different to that not being there, to being with someone that you're not fully sold on and you're not really sure and something feels off all the time and you've always got doubts, whatever. That feels so different to being with someone when you're just like, I just want to be with them and I'm going to make it work. That's like, that's what I mean by like, it's not necessarily easier, but it feels so much more worthwhile and obvious of a choice to work on stuff. But I do think if you're waiting for an easy relationship, you may die waiting. you may die waiting. But yeah, please let me know your thoughts. This is probably a very long episode. I can feel this is really interesting to me. I love talking about relationships. But yeah, I just think things like this, they float around, they get in your head, you carry that, you've heard them since you were like 12, do you know what I mean? And then you don't want to be carrying them around and letting them control your relationship or make you feel weird about anything in your relationship when a lot of them are just bullshit. Do you know what I mean? And it's up to you to decide what you think, basically. So please let me know your thoughts. I will probably find some new ones and do a part 2 at some point because it's very interesting. And yeah, I'm gonna shut up. I've talked for a very long time. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope you found it interesting. Let me know your thoughts. I'm begging you. I'm so interested. And yeah, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching, and I will talk to you next Tuesday.